Everything that we make is with and for people. So I think about creativity and how you scale products as how you work with other people. And what I'm specifically going to focus on is not the users that you test with or the consumers that you're trying to reach, but actually how you run your organization and how teams inside your organization work together. Okay? Because the way people work together has every bit to do with who you resonate with in the market and how relevant you are to them. So when I came out to Stanford, I was researching organizational behavior and organization design, and I came across this thing called Conway's Law. How many of you are familiar with Conway's Law? Okay, I knew some people in here would be. Usually when I talk to people, they're not in your field and they have no idea what this is. But Melvin Conway was a software developer. And back in the 60s, he observed that how you're set up internally and how you communicate with teams internally directly mirrors the product that you put out into the market. So in his observation, if 3 teams were working on a new piece of software at their company, when that software launched, it would inevitably have 3 distinct components. Okay? So for me, this really resonated because I knew, like in a newsroom, if a reporter's working on a story and they don't tell a photographer about it, then a photographer's not going to take a picture, and therefore when it goes into the newspaper or on the website, it's not going to have an image with it, and therefore it's not going to communicate in that way. So when you think about the way that you work internally, those teams and the way you communicate directly impacts what you put out into the world and how much it resonates with the people you're trying to reach.
And what I really wanted to talk about in product release and scaling that I thought was a little different is there's really 3 more things that go on for Plantronics. Once we have 1, then we need to create 1 million, and then we need to take the 1 million and get them out to 1 million individuals exactly the way they want, with our brand fully intact, with them understanding what we're trying to do, us understanding them, and then what's the feedback loop to make this entire thing work? So I was going to talk a little bit about how that works, and I was going to start with the how we get from that 1 perfect product from Shantanu to 1 million of them internally sitting in the factory ready to go. And actually, Justin's presentation was a huge relief to me because some of the crazy stuff we do in our factory, I now know that what we've intuitively gotten to is an emergent system, which is really, really cool. So when you go to manufacture a product like this, you go and you work with some place like Foxconn, right? You know, you got that first perfect design, and you go outsource this and you know, tell Foxconn to make you 100 million of these. Absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong.
You know, Qualcomm has a very, very strong voice and music business. It was acquired from CSR exactly 1 year to the day today. It's our 1-year anniversary of being part of Qualcomm. And you know, during that period, you know, we've generated significant amounts of revenue from those products, significant amounts of profit for the wider organization. But you know, about 18 months, 2 years ago, it was very clear that the overall market for these products was changing. You know, we could identify a number of threats from competitor companies, and we could see there's new entrants in the market who were coming in China, in the low end of the market. And actually, that made us kind of rethink overall, you know, how we were going to approach our engineering and how we're going to scale our product releases. I think the key takeaway for me, and especially about some of the things that I've heard in the last day and a half, never be afraid to rethink your engineering practices. You know, we had have a very, very successful business, lots of customers, and going really, really well. But if we stop looking, you know, over our shoulders to see what's coming, you know, it could have been quite challenging. So we've put ourselves in a really good position with our next generation of products.
Think about the deployments. You know, it doesn't matter if it is digital or hardware. Really think about the deployment. Is it ready for the target customers? Or are you just building for your early adopters? It's a whole different thing. You know, you have to look at your spectrum end to end. Is it ready for globalization? We love to build it for US. All of us are. We're very biased. I love your example from different markets, how you're making people proud of what they're doing. You have to think globally. Even to the color of what you're building, you have to think globally. Because that's how you're going to really, really be successful. And whatever you do, is it simple, including locomotives. Because you heard that, right? This thing is going through a 6-mile long tunnel. How many of you knew about that? How many of you even thought about testing? And these things, now you're going to be stuck behind one of those trains, right? How many of you have been stuck behind a railroad track? Count the cars, and first look at how many locomotives there are. Usually 2 in the front, 1 in the back. Imagine when they're going through that tunnel. They're choking to death. So is it simple to maintain? Because if this thing gets stuck on the track, what they do, they send huge people, lots of people over there, and maintenance is very difficult. Helicopters are flying, others are trying to get there. Not an easy thing to do. So even the locomotives, as complex a machine as it is, we have to think about it simpler.